2021 on January 26th. Members present, myself, Kevin Fuller, Jan Kearney, and Jonathan Smith. Please rise and salute the flag and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Evening, everyone. It's like we start with citizens' concern, correct? All right, hearing none. On to the approval of prior month's minutes. I don't have it before me, but I will abstain from that vote. I was not here for that.
I have no objections.
All right, seeing none. Pass, approved. Item number 3, the sewer credits tabulation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got here the listing of sewer credits that were issued in the end of November and December and ran a total for year-to-date of 2021, $6,900 worth, and for the calendar year there were 32 credits under $1,000 for an average of $217. And then for the month of January 2022, there was an outside spigot leak, and so year-to-date 2022 is $185 and change.
So what's, just so I understand the acronym of the WPB USP fail?
A water-powered backup sump pump.
Okay. So the sump pump failed, so the water backup kicked in?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, I
understand. I just want to make sure that I know for certain.
Mm-hmm.
What about WL?
A water line under the sink.
Oh, okay, done. Thanks.
I'll spell these out next time.
No, you don't need to.
You know,
Okay.
well, that should be a foolish decision.
If the acronym spelled out or not.
I don't need them spelled out, we can ask, as long as you don't mind repeating numerous times.
Okay.
If I forget.
Okay.
Do we have any further questions on these, or?
There's no action we need to take or anything.
Okay.
It's just a report for us.
Looks like next item is water and sewer miscellaneous fees.
Yeah, I'm going to start this, so then I'm going to hand it off to Matt, because he created this beautiful spreadsheet for all of you and for me. As you are aware, we had a rate study done for water and sewer, and you all approved the changes in rates for the next 4 years. One of the other issues is the cost, the fees that are associated with doing things such as taps or fixing meters or replacing meters or installing meters. The city of Perrysburg is currently losing money because product is so expensive and because collective bargaining agreements have raised our employees' pay, which is wonderful. That's in no way a discredit to that. But because of that, we need to discuss raising the fees and the cost of these items. The best example I can give you is that a 3/4 inch tap, our charge for inside the city is currently $500. The actual cost to do that, to break even, and we aren't looking to make money for the city off of this, we're looking to not lose money, is $1,550. So these have not been evaluated since 2017, and we need to do that. The other part of this discussion, and the reason I haven't put it into legislation for you, is for us to determine how you want these evaluated. Do you want us to bring them to you every year, like we're doing today, and as cost of product goes up, just ask you to increase the fees? Do you want us to consider a percentage increase every year because we know things cost more every year and increase them by a certain amount, and if we think we get behind, come back. Do you want us to do that for just a few years and then reevaluate? So say, these are the fees for 2022, we're going to increase them by 5% each year for the next 4 years, and then in the fourth year, we'll reevaluate for year 5 and after. I don't have a preference for you, except that every year seems a little, bringing you the same legislation every year seems a little repetitive, and I know that Matt has a lot on his plate, and asking him to do this every year is a lot, but we are kind of here to discuss that with all of you. So I guess, what are the first questions? So I can hide and Matt can talk. And if you need a month to look at this.
I actually do have a couple quick questions, so.
Okay.
I know that's a big change. I'm assuming most of this is inflationary related, because I recall us talking about this. I didn't realize it was 5 years ago, but I do remember the conversation in the past.
That is correct.
Okay. There's a huge change in the 5-year period.
Even in just the last 3 months, we did the same exercise in September, thinking ahead towards this, and they had increased from September to the end of the year already, so it is significant.
Can you talk about this on the committee and to looking into it?
Yeah, I know we've talked about it. We knew this was
And
coming.
sliding, like, what percentage they could raise it up to?
I don't know. I think it would be better to come, especially with the way the inflation is right now, maybe annually. But if we start to see it stable out again, to extend that period. But the other question I have on this is, looking at the fees, we have a different fee for inside and outside. My thought is always, government doesn't charge more than what they need. Is there a reason that there's a larger fee for outside versus inside?
Those are not our citizens, and they are not contributing to the income tax base that the citizens inside the city are contributing to, so we charge additional fees for outside the city for use of our utilities and services.
But the utilities is not contributed by with the general fund, am I
I
correct?
understand that, but that's one of the answers to the process.
If it's not contributed for the general fund for the tax dollars, my thought is.
It's also an incentive to NS.
Okay. So there's an incentive in there.
Yes.
My concern is just such a large difference between the two. Is that just based off a percentage? Because I know previously it was a $25 difference between the inside and outside.
Yes, just a percentage difference of the outside rate. We have it at initial 25% increase.
Okay.
That's just consistent throughout the calculation.
And correct me if I'm wrong, even these are slightly under what it actually costs?
These are at break-even points as of today.
Okay. Now, when we talk about break even, we're talking about the inside?
That's correct, yes. Yeah, the inside rate is the basis for all the calculation.
I just have some hesitancy. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, John.
I just have hesitancy with some of the large discrepancies between the inside and outside. For instance, I'm looking at the 2-inch ultrasonic meter plus radio remote. That's about a $820 difference, when previously that was a $25 difference. That's a pretty hefty change between the two. I understand the thought of using a percentage. And my first instinct is to not have a different rate between the inside and outside for the installation of these. But I mean, if there is anything, I don't think it should be that significant of a difference between some of these rates. The other question I was going to ask, just get an idea of the different meters, the ultrasonic and the compound. And these are all going to be for the meters that are going to have the tower that we're going to have reported to. So for the radio remote, I'm sorry, for the tower. But can you tell me the difference between the ultrasonic and the compound meters?
It's a different technology.
Okay. Are we moving towards one or the other? Or?
No, the ultrasonic meters, They're newer in the clean water side of the industry. They are they don't have moving parts, so that there is less to go wrong with one. But the problem with those meters historically has been their ability to measure flows into buildings. So our question is, to the supplier, do they have the same level of accuracy at low flows that the compound meters do? And so far the answer is yes. It's just that we don't have a history to rely on. We have one installed recently.
Okay, so is it a request of the homeowner or builder, or?
For that size, that would be more of a commercial.
Okay.
A commercial size application. A homeowner is typically a 1-inch meter or
Okay.
a 5/8 inch meter is the standard. A larger home will be a 1-inch meter.
And the other question I'll ask as well is, I know we do have a handful of residents who do not have a radio receiver on their actual meters. I'm assuming that is taken in the 1-inch meter fee, where it doesn't have the radio remote on there. If they ever if there's a need to actually replace that meter at that point.
Yeah, the 1-inch meter, everything should have a meter and a radio remote attached to it. I think that's just the tax doesn't add on to that, is all.
Okay, I see Alice has her.
Yes. The health objectives were down to 3.
Okay.
We had 4, and one of them moved. We're down to 3, and they pay their differential on their monthly bill. There's a clause, one of the rules in 1060.06 that deals with that. So that's just an add-on to their bill. The day will come when their scan pad won't read anymore, and then we'll have to upgrade, or they'll have to put their meter in a pit with the radio read.
Okay.
Because there won't be any other choice.
That's what I was kind of curious, is what would happen if the event a meter needs to be replaced for one of those? Okay, so there is a solution that they would still have something like this, but it would be
Yes.
further away.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jonathan, to your point about the outside rate, we can adjust that to whatever we want, and the spreadsheet will calculate accordingly. So if we think there's a fair rate or a fixed rate for outside the city, that's very easy to accommodate. We can reprice for it.
So what services, for those that might be outside the city and don't contribute to the tax base, what services might they be reaping the rewards of, that would, I guess, add to the cost differential that Jonathan alluded to?
Garbage, snow plow, police, are we just be annexed?
Yeah, I guess my question is in regards to the actual item itself, say like the tap, are we providing like a replacement, if there's like damage or things like that? Is this something that whose responsibility is that?
If a meter.
Like say a meter, yeah.
Yeah, well, it depends on, if the meter freezes, that's up to the homeowner to replace. If it's damages through wear or tear, that gets replaced by the city.
Okay.
If they,
Kevin, just so, I'm sorry. The one question I asked earlier was that the water utility department is not typically contributed with the general fund of the tax dollars itself. It's funded by the actual water rate and these types of fees.
Okay.
If that's what that was the question you were trying to get to.
Yeah, I guess, I was just trying to.
Is there a service that the tax dollars are going to?
Yeah.
I personally have no trouble with the higher fees for outside, especially if they help us offset the fees for the people who live within the city of Perrysburg. And that's very justifiable to me.
If I was you, my thought would be is the outside just has an extra $50 added on top if we're looking at doing anything, but as a more of a compromise. I mean, personally, I don't think that the government should be, or the city, I should say, shouldn't be charging more than what's needed for the service itself, even though that they're not a income tax resident. They are still utilizing the same service that they're contributing through with their water bill.
I think
And I was going to say, and I understand a incentive to annex and to bring them into the city. I just, I hesitate with making it that cost prohibitive for something that,
So you have no problems with the citizens who live in Perrysburg and pay taxes, offsetting or subsidizing outside?
I don't follow because they're not, we're not subsidizing anybody
No.
outside in this.
But it's not fair for them, and, never mind, I'm just gonna do that. I don't have any problem with the outside being more, the percentage more, especially if it helps offset what our citizens pay.
I don't think that this is offsetting anything, and
No,
one of the
but it
reasons
could.
why I am a little more against this as well is I know some of our residents are paying extra fees for the district on top of the other, what they have to pay for the city service as well. And I know that's nothing the city can do about that, but some of those, I don't want to see our city residents treated any different than what we would want them treated, if you follow me on that. It from like the district's perspective. I want to try to keep it fair, more on even keel.
Sure. It's simple. We can make it consistent across the board.
Mr. Chairman, the additional charge on these one-time fees to outside city, that differential goes into our reserve fund, so in that respect, it does help inside city. It helps the entire system, but does help inside city residents.
So I guess the question is, everybody sort of takes a pregnant pause. Would you like us to redo the spreadsheet with some other options and bring it back in a month? Would you like a month to look at this? I don't think it's ready to go to council on Tuesday, but it can be if you're ready to do that. What would you like to do the next step as a committee? And that's for you, I'm sorry, I'm looking at him.
Okay, no, that's all right.
I'm gonna stop looking over there.
I have to learn to be quiet.
Few things, I guess, in general, I wouldn't have any like apples to apples comparison, other municipalities, how they operate.
We
Do
do,
we have that?
yes, we have that.
I
That's one
figured
of
you
the,
probably had that.
yes, that's one of the handouts.
Okay, I just thought maybe might be great for possible discussion as
Yes.
to the
Yes.
differential and the cost
You have
of inside and
that.
outside the
It
city.
looks like this,
Fine print.
sitting up at your table.
Okay. Duplicates of things.
All this white paper, I know I just.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And this
It says
is
at the
compared
top.
to tabs.
You got it. That's it, Jan. I think it
So
I
we-
have it, yeah.
So was a determination made for the differential in our city? Was that just I guess, a median or average of what you see?
On this comparison, I just put the inside city rates,
Okay,
because that was predominantly what we're looking at with the other communities.
okay. Yeah, it looks
Although
like
on
Oregon.
Oregon, you can see, you have inside and outside for Oregon,
Yeah, that's significant.
which is a pretty significant
Difference.
rate differential there.
Almost $1,000 more.
And there's also, as you'll see, there's not apples to apples for a number of these line items, but we matched them up where we had the information from the other communities. Oh, yeah.
I know you did one.
Looks like a pretty reasonable compared to some of them, in some areas, not all.
So I'm going to ask a follow-up question here, looking at the hydrant charges. I know we're doubling the illegal use, and I think that we need to continue to discourage the illegal using of the fire hydrants. Is that sufficient enough to be a curb, or how often are we having issues of this?
It's not been anything that we have been, I guess, the word would be vigilant on. It's meant more to be the deterrent.
Okay. Did we have anybody report anything in the last several years, or?
I can ask the chief of police. I haven't heard about significant illegal use of our fire hydrants. That doesn't mean it's not happening until schools, if you did the thing on
Yeah,
block.
that's kind of where I'm sure that there's a few that.
But, I mean, we just don't have the staff to monitor all summer out in the developments to necessarily catch people.
Did you notice that from a sewer? On usage and that line? Because you're talking about a lot of water going through a hydrant.
Well, if it's not metered though.
On the outgoing, there's leaks monitored.
We would not be able to detect that, even though it is a
That's
significant
kind
amount of
of what
flow.
you're asking, right?
Yeah, because
Yeah. Let's say that you have a fire flow, the way we would know that something would happen is we would see a signal to one of our towers that its level's dropping or our pumps are kicking on. We would not know that there's a particular hydrant in a particular neighborhood that's flowing. And so we have two different pressure zones, so we'd be looking for, not a needle in a haystack, but a drop in the bucket, just to try to keep it as water, but it would be hard to find. We would not be able to isolate where that is.
Unless you have multiple people doing it at once.
Yes, or you have somebody call in, and that's typically how this stuff does happen, is a contractors are typically the main people that do this illegal use of the hydrants, so that it's filling up for a floor or something like that. So residents will call in and say, hey, this ABC water tanker truck is filling up on my street, and their water pressure will drop, or the water will get cloudy or something like that. So they'll call in and report that to us.
Because I know that's actually happened outside my parents' house before.
Oh.
And they got caught, but they didn't get the name.
Right.
So by the time they took off, there was nothing to really report at that point. And so the only question I have is that going to be enough of a deterrent?
We can make it whatever you want. If you want to do $10,000 for illegal use of a meter, we make it $10,000. Whatever makes you, whatever you.
But it's what I wanted to know.
Yeah.
Do you believe that this is going to be a strong enough deterrent, or do you think that it should be higher? I'm looking for your guesses, all of your expertise on that.
It never occurred to me to illegally use a fire hydrant, to be perfectly honest. So I really don't know what the deterrent amount needs to be.
we don't see it caught.
Yeah, that's.
I mean, if you make it high enough and you put it out there, just be aware this summer, citizens of Perrysburg, the fine for illegal use of a fire hydrant is $10,000. Maybe you do deter a few people who go, it costs me less to fill a pool than it does to.
I was gonna say, maybe it'll encourage them to use other means to fill their pools.
If one of these tanker trucks were to use our bulk filling station, I think depending on the size of the tank, it might be around $200 charge for them. So it's in that ballpark, 5 times more.
So I'm wondering if maybe make it a $2,000 to make it more of a, that way it's 10 times expensive. If they get away with it once, if they can get away with it 5 times, they're profitable.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So if you make it 10 times, it's.
Well, if I could, Mr. Chairman, if I could just add, this doesn't happen too often, and I don't want to give people false hope that this is just, if we catch somebody, and then that's going to be $10,000 in our fund. I had an experience with a previous employer. We had caught them, but we weren't able to prosecute because it was a sheriff's deputy at that time said they didn't see it, so we weren't able. We had an affidavit from one of our employees, but no prosecution happened. So it's not as, in that instance, it wasn't as clear cut as we would have hoped.
I think all we would need is make it a civil fine. Is it a criminal offense in the code, or is that a civil
It's got to
offense?
be civil fine.
Okay.
But
The civil, you wouldn't need to
I
have.
will confirm to you, because if it's a criminal fine, then it can't go above $1,000. So let me,
Okay.
because I can't imagine it's more than a minor.
What our preference would be to allow, or to encourage and incentivize the use of cities' hydro meters.
No. That's what what I'm thinking as well. If someone sees that, hey, it's gonna be 2,000, I get caught, but I can pay, $75 for the setup, and what's it now? So when it says like $100 per quarter, is that?
That's more related to commercial users that have their own private fire lines.
Okay.
So what they have to do is they have to test those fire lines every year.
Yeah.
They should be testing those every
Gotcha.
year, and that requires, that water is not metered. And so that's meant to cover the cost of the water that's used for those tests.
That's a big change too for them, for those businesses, from a $5 to a $100 charge to do that now. I understand trying to make sure it's cost effective. And that's going to be for them to, if they have a sprinkler system in their building, or is that?
Fire protection system, yeah, it works out to $33 a month.
Okay.
That covers the cost of our clerks doing the billing, the cost of any postage associated with it, the handling of any paper for the life of that paper.
Okay.
All right. Anyone have anything else regarding that? No?
So what would you like as the next step for this? Would you like?
I would like to, I think it would be quite beneficial to see some apples to apples comparison on the differential between the inside and the outside. If we have like local neighboring communities that may have that, I think that might help us maybe analyze. Because I think, listen to Jonathan, I think what he's saying is we're going too far. I think we're taking in more than what we should. I think we do that elsewhere in other circumstances. Why it might be beneficial. Are we taking in too much? I think it just maybe give us a good idea to
What other communities are doing.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that would be one of my recommendations to come back with. And then also, just to prepare, I think this should be renewed annually. I know right now, just because of, fittings, piping, everything is through the roof right now. Should that come back, we don't want to be in a situation where, especially with the differential on top of that, with the inside and the outside, that we're taking in too much and the price goes down, so.
That's one thing that would help us with the differential with the inside and outside. The outside can offset that inflationary rate.
Okay,
And so our people would have a less higher.
We'll come back with legislation the next time with this setup, with the still 25% differential, because that won't be all that difficult to change if you all decide to lower that. We'll try to find apples to apples comparisons for inside and outside. I'm not sure how easy that will be, but we'll do our best to try to find that. And that'll give you all a month to sort of digest this, look at the comparisons you have, and then see if there are any other changes that you'd like to do before next month. Does that seem like a fair plan?
I think so. So again, we're looking at the percentage, as you said, 25% currently, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I guess what I hate to see is you come back with legislation where we possibly reduce that, right?
It's not that difficult because it's in an Excel spreadsheet.
Okay.
And it really will be a matter of, this is what the rates are currently, is what section 1 will say. Section 2 will say, this is the proposed amendment to this, to 10, I think it's 1060 something, but I'm going to cut and paste it from his Excel spreadsheet. So if you change the numbers, I can just remove it from the legislation and put it back in.
Okay.
So I appreciate that, but in this case, and if you decide that you want to have more discussion, it doesn't have to go forward up to the next meeting. This is a discussion process, clearly.
All right. I think that's all I had regarding that. Is there anything you guys would like to see further on this next meeting? All right. Let's move on to the next item. We have the sanitary sewer oversizing agreement.
Yes, so, Coventry Point Plat 2 is completed?
Yes.
Is completed, and this is sort of catching us up. We're going to do this for Coventry Point Plat 3 as well. We asked the developer to put in 30-inch sewers, which is larger than is necessarily required. Please tell me I'm saying the right words. 36, just come up here. That is larger than is necessarily required, and as an offset, we pay the difference. Is the simple lawyer version of what we're talking about.
Okay.
The purpose of oversizing the sewers is so that they can reach the southernmost extent, in this case, of where we want the sewer system to ultimately go. The developer proposes costs that it would take them to construct their subdivision using typically 8-inch and 10-inch sewers at a particular depth. The city and the developer enter into an agreement to say that the city will pay that difference between that deeper, larger sewer and what it will cost that developer to put in the smaller sewers. The city benefits because it increases its ability to serve to a wider area.
Hopefully no more overflows and get the water out quicker.
And the other half of that is, so we don't go in 5 years and have to resize a pipe,
Yeah, you would, yes. If you
dig up the road and put in a
20
bigger.
years for that, it's starting out last Saturday.
And who knows what the cost is going to be then.
Right.
Yeah.
You would not be able to necessarily oversize the pipe. You'd have to install a pump station, and those pump stations are pricey in their own right.
We know what that is going on right now with trying to figure out what to do in the older section of town.
Correct?
So this cost assumes the difference between the larger and the smaller pipes of the material, and then the cost to dig a bit deeper?
Yes, and the inspection of the same.
And inspection, okay. Any questions regarding this?
I would like to make a comment. That's an excellent idea, having inspectors out there, because eventually, that's one area where we don't necessarily do inspection on these developments. We have no idea what we're getting when we accept them. So doing this, we at least got.
Councilwoman Attorney, we do use third-party private sector inspectors for subdivisions, for the underground.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Looks like the recommendation is to move this to council at this point, correct, as an emergency measure?
Yes.
Is that typical in this case, or are we requesting emergency?
It doesn't have to be emergency.
We can take it as either as an emergency.
Okay.
The developer has an expectation that it's going to be emergency.
The developer would like you to pay sooner rather than later because they fronted the cost of this.
Okay.
And so this is a reimbursement. So I would ask if we could do this as an emergency so we can.
Yeah, so they can get their money back. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay,
So yeah, there is an answer to that.
okay. Seems reasonable. I'll entertain a motion to move that on to city council. Resolution.
I'll move it.
Yep.
Sounds like we're all in favor.
No objections.
Is there anything for other business this evening? Hearing none. Meeting is adjourned.
Well done, Councilman Fuller.
Hey,
You're faster than me.
I have a compromise.
Anytime it's less than an hour, you're doing great.
What if we make the outside include